Yes, good evening, everybody. Paul Griffiths here with Photography Live and Uncut. I'm delighted to have my guest today because I think I might have to start that again. Actually, it's just gone live. So, good evening, everybody. It's Paul Griffiths here with Photography Live and Uncut. I'm delighted to have my guest today from New York. It's Antonio M Rosario. Thank you, Antonio, for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's really exciting to be on your show.
Yeah, it's absolutely great because I just want to explain to my guest, this guy is suffering big time from a cold. He's voice is cracking up. So we're gonna keep this to a little bit of a shorter program than usual. Added to the fact, not only has he got a crackly voice, but he's got to go and do some work this afternoon. So good luck to that. Thanks. I'm going to get straight to it, Antonio, because I'm a Fuji user. You're using Fuji basically for your street work. What attracted you to the Fuji gear?
Well, the first Fuji camera I got was the X20.
Okay.
And I was looking for a replacement for what do I have? The Panasonic Lumix camera. I was using that for a sort of pocket, point and shoot kind of camera, just to carry something with me that wasn't my Nikon. And the Fuji cameras have been out for a while, and I sort of longed for them a little bit, but I decided to, I don't know if I was looking for like an Olympus or another Panasonic Lumix, but for some reason I went to the photo show in New York at the Javits Center, the Photo Expo, and was playing around with the Fujis, and there was something about the feel of the camera. Yeah. And it's funny because I usually don't buy cameras on looks, a little bit of the feel, but there was something about the way the X series looked, especially the X20. That's what I was looking at the time. And I actually wanted something with a little weight that I could carry around my shoulder because the Panasonics were too small. And so they're really for the pocket. But I wanted something to put around my shoulder. So the X20 felt like that kind of camera. Like it's small enough, I could probably put it in my pocket, in a jacket pocket, but I could, it had enough weight to hang off my shoulder. So I decided to bite the bullet and spend some money I didn't have. It wasn't that expensive. I think the X20 was, it was $400 or $500. I can't remember, but it's
a pretty reasonable price camera.
Yeah.
The only thing, of course, with the X20 and obviously the X30 that's followed is a 2/3" sensor. I in actual fact tried the X20 in one of the local shops once, and I was quite impressed with it. But when I picked up the X30, I was amazed by the size was a little bit bigger, and it really suited my hands. I've got fairly large hands. Which is one of the reasons why I switched away from the Nikon 1 series, which was my go-to camera at the time. And I was really impressed with the X30, but what they in actual fact managed to compact into this small camera was quite amazing. Have you ever used the X30?
My friend has got the X30.
Right.
But in fact, he was showing it to me yesterday. He's got it. My friend Gene Mealy, another photographer, a close friend of mine, he bought the X30 after he saw the stuff that I was doing with my X20.
Right.
Because the X20 wasn't available, and he had it modified for infrared. So,
right, okay.
Yeah, so he's got quite an interesting filter connection to the front. It makes it look very space age. The only thing that was different is it doesn't have the optical viewfinder. I really wanted an optical viewfinder, but when I was buying the camera, the X30 wasn't out. It was only the X20 at that time.
Yeah.
So for me, it was either that or I was looking at the X100S, but I couldn't afford it at that time. Yeah. So I was like, well, the X20 seems like a nice compromise. Yeah. And the fact that it had a bit of a zoom and that it had a 28 millimeter on the wide, or the 28 equivalent, and that it was it's an f2 lens.
That's right.
Like all those contributed into making it a very desirable camera. But I didn't know how much I would like it until after I started shooting with it.
Yeah.
That was I had to start shooting with it to realize how much I was enjoying it. And the X20 doesn't have, it has the film simulations, and I used to shoot Fuji film stocks, so I was very aware of what the simulations would look like, and they were pretty close to what I remember what the films looked like. So
yeah,
it was a big plus for me.
Yeah, I think what Fuji have done with the actual filter, the sensor is quite amazing, because everyone I speak to that are Fuji users or are non-Fuji users and look at the files and look at the print, they all say, wow, that's so much like what Fujifilm used to be like when in the old film days.
Yeah.
So from the X20, looking at your files, you've now moved on, and I noticed a review you've done on the X100T. You use the T now on a regular basis.
Yeah, I got the T for my 50th birthday. It was sort of
Excellent. Lovely present.
My wife let me get it, and she was like, "Oh, if you want something really special, you should get that camera." So
yeah,
I got that, and I still have my X20 with me, but I can't carry both of these things around all the time. So I'm leaning towards the 100, but I'm like, I wouldn't have gotten the 100 had I not had the experience with the 20.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying.
And I think it's a bigger camera, slightly bigger, and it reminds me. I never had a rangefinder when I was growing up. I used to just use with an SLR camera, so it's not like it reminds me of some old camera that I had, because I never had one of those. But I always wanted a rangefinder camera, so this is sort of my way of getting back in touch with having a rangefinder without going back into film.
And I think you're right, actually. When you're choosing a camera, it is all about feel. A lot of guys say, well, buy the Nikon because it's Nikon. They buy the Canon because it's a Canon. They don't actually go in and sort of say, now, does this fit me? Does this work for me? Can I go to it blindfolded? Do I know where the dials are? And I think this is one thing which the Fuji's created with these cameras. Yeah,
and again, if I look at the X20 compared to the X100, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Where the dials are, the back menus are very similar. The menu system itself is very, they're almost exactly alike. And so the transformation from one to the other, the transition from one to the other wasn't really big. But I still have to say that the X100T is still kicks my butt a little bit. I've used cameras all my life. I've been shooting since I was 12 years old. So I'm 50. So I'm telling you, I've been shooting for a while.
A while now, yeah.
Yeah, and the closest I've gotten to a camera that's really put me under the table a little bit was a Nikon F. I think it was the F4 or F5.
Okay.
It's one of those two cameras. It was really hard to get a grasp on a lot of the features. And I'm a fairly smart guy, so I know how to figure out cameras. But the X100 was really taking a long time it's a big learning curve, I'm noticing.
It's interesting you say this, actually, because I've heard this mentioned by other people. Dave Hobby and Zach Arias all said basically the same thing about the X100 when it first came out. It wasn't a fast focusing camera by any stretch of the imagination of the initial 100. The images were fantastic, but everyone that I've heard talking about that particular camera, and obviously the S improved and the T improved on those two versions, but everyone said, I just love it. I just love it. But God, sometimes it's so difficult to use. What is it about cameras that do this to us?
Well, it's like, maybe it's akin to driving a really fast car.
Yeah, good point.
They look good, but you really have to work at figuring out how to take advantage of all the features that the car is going to give you, so that you stay on the road and you take advantage of the speed and the way it grips the road. And I think this is the same thing with this camera. The X20 was really easy to learn. It reacted fast. It's a smaller sensor, and there's a lot of depth of field. And I started shooting street photography with it, so it was really good for that. And I thought, it'll be an easy transition to the X100T. And I was like,
I know, it's caught you out.
No, it's not.
Interesting point. Let me just take you back on a point you made there. The X20 got you into street photography.
Well, yes and no.
Of sorts, yes and no, right.
I'll show you. My iPhone got me into street photography, all right? So I've always done street photography sort of here and there, and even on the small Canon ELPHs that I had, or a camera that you can't see that I'm taking a picture with. So I've been doing that off and on, but not on a regular basis. And the iPhone came out, and I also, at the same time I got my iPhone, I moved to a new neighborhood where there was a lot of people that reminded me of New York when I was growing up, very diverse ethnic groups living together. And there was that sort of that mix with, I mean, the cultures of the people that live in my neighborhood. There's a lot of people who stay outside. You know, they sit on the benches outside on the street, and so there's a lot of opportunities for photographing. And when I got the iPhone, I was like, oh, this is a perfect little spy camera to take pictures of people who are sitting. And so that sort of sparked it. But of course, I began to realize that there's limitations to this device, even though it's a great camera.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, there was just some stuff that I couldn't do really well, and it was a little frustrating. So that's when I decided to sort of up it a little bit by introducing, like, I think I've been shooting with the Panasonic Lumix. I have the LX3, which I'm never going to sell. It's a great little camera. I haven't used it in a while, but it's got one of the best lenses for a small camera. It's really sharp. I even shot a job with that. Don't tell anybody, but
keep that to yourself.
Yeah, I have somewhere I have a calendar where there's the famous garden in Brooklyn called the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, and I shot for them a couple of years in a row. And for one of the calendars I did, there was sometimes I needed to get a very good macro shot in, like, sticking my hand into the trees or something like that, and it was so much easier to do with the Lumix. And so I shot these pictures with the Lumix, and they ended up printing out really well in the calendar. But anyway, the Lumix had some limitations too. It's just like I said, I wanted somebody to carry around my shoulder and stuff like that. So that's where I was sort of building up to the Fuji. And in the meantime, I'm shooting street stuff. I'm getting more and more into that as I'm sort of losing some of my commercial business. I decided, well, you know, I want to start shooting people in New York at my neighborhood on a regular basis. So the commercial photography is dropping a little bit, and the desire to shooting street photography is going up, and then the cameras are changing simultaneously. And then I got this, I got the X20 in, I think it was November of 2013, right? Yeah. Yeah. And from then on, I was like, this is the camera for the street. I mean, it was perfect. It was quiet. It was versatile. Yeah. I shot more pictures, I think, in the first year that I had the X20, or 12 months, maybe 10 months, than I shot in like 2 or 3 years combined with my Nikons. Really? It was like, I think by the end of the year, I had something like 80 or 90,000 shots that I did on the X20. Wow. Yeah. Amazing. So it just grew, and again, because you look at it and it doesn't look like a camera it's not intimidating. So that was part of it. I could walk around, it's black, it's quiet, it hangs around my neck. I look like a tourist or something like that. So it just allowed me to do that. So, and then the X100 was sort of the next step up. The only thing I was disappointed with is the 35 millimeter equivalent lens. I really wanted something a little bit wider. So that was my first challenge with the X100T.
Yeah, of course, you can get the adapter to fit onto that 23mm lens, and I
didn't want to spend another few $100s on that.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
I didn't want to increase the size of the camera, but I figured I'd work with it. That was one of the challenges for me, was going from a 28 millimeter, because I shot 28 wide on my X20, and so now I had to sort of change my distance from my subjects a little bit so I could capture them. Yeah. So that was one of my hurdles.
Yeah, step back a little bit more. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned there, because I've been looking at your website, and obviously I could see some commercial work there. And you were saying just before we started the show, the commercial side of your work now has started to slow down a little bit more. You're getting more involved with video, which is what you use your Nikon for. How have you been able? Let me ask a straight question. How are you bringing the pennies on the table? How are you affording to pay for the bread?
Well, I have a regular job. I work for a television station in Brooklyn.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's not a full-time job; it's part-time. But I work video live. I do a live show every day except Fridays. And it's all about Brooklyn. Okay. And every now and then for that job, I go out on field shoots. So we do some field shoots and stuff like that. But it's exclusively video. For photography, if there's anything that comes in, I used to be a pretty prolific stock photographer. My commercial work was mostly distributed through Getty And prior to that, a company called the Image Bank, which was before Getty absorbed it. It was like one of the largest stock agencies in the world. So I grew up sort of in the stock world. I was doing stock photography, and that obviously has gone down considerably. So I don't submit to stock as much, and any other commercial jobs I get are sort of one-offs. Like if I'm doing I try to do weddings once in a while. They're not easy to pick up, but I enjoy those. But I also do commissions, and I've been selling a lot of prints. So a lot of the stuff that you might see on my website, the black and white stuff, I sell as fine art prints.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned about the prints, because I was going to mention, ask the question before when you're talking about the X20 and of the X100T and the Lumix and the iPhone with your printed work. Now, I'm going to accept there's obviously a difference when you're using the iPhone because of the size of the sensor. Have you noticed any major difference and difficulties by going from the X20 to the X100T? I'm going to ignore the Lumix for the time being, but if that's part of your process of learning it with regards to printing, have you found any major problems with that?
Not really. No.
It's amazing, isn't it?
In fact, I shot. There was an exhibit. Let me see if I try not to make this a long story. There was a giant sugar factory in Brooklyn that was going to be demolished, and an artist got in there and built an installation piece in this old sugar factory. Her name was Carol Walker, I think. And I went to it just before it closed and before they knocked the building down. It was a great old sugar. You can imagine inside's black and it's full of like molasses and stuff. And I shot a bunch of stuff with my X20, and I got a request when I posted up one of those prints, images on Flickr. Someone I know on Twitter asked me to buy one of those prints at a certain size for Christmas, for a Christmas gift. And like I had not really printed from the X20 pretty much at all. So I just haven't had a chance to. So I said, well, okay, I'll do it for you. So I have an Epson 3800. So sorry, this is New York. You're gonna hear
yeah, I can hear. That's New York sounds for me. Don't worry.
Yeah.
As long as they're not coming for you.
No. It's an ambulance, I think. I hope. Hope everybody's okay. So I ended up printing it, I think at 13 by 19 or 17 by 22, and it was just a straight shot from the X20. And I had to do a little tweaking in Photoshop, but very little compared to what I thought I would have to from it's a 12 megapixel camera, right? As I recall.
Yeah, it's 12. It is 12. Yeah. I
was surprised at how well it printed up for this little camera.
Yeah.
And
you're not the first to say that, actually, Antonio, because I've spoken to many Fuji users in the UK here, and they're expected to sort of present some work which goes with the exhibition stands and all. And you can imagine 6-foot wide prints they're printing for the panels, and some of the work is you just got There's obviously the statement from acceptable viewing distances. Let's be honest about it. But
but we're not looking at them like this, right?
No, exactly right. You don't look at an image like that. I'll tell a short story. I went to an exhibition for an Ansel Adams exhibition, and these prints were enormous. 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot high, and 5-6 foot wide. And this guy was looking at it literally a foot away. And he said, they're very, very grainy images, aren't they? I said,
yes.
Be serious, please.
You can't argue with them, though. You're looking at it that close.
No,
of course.
Exactly. You can't argue. I said, come back here about 8 yards back. Now look at it.
Yeah.
I see the point you're making. But acceptable viewing distance. But I'm pleased what you said there about the size, because I print A4, which is well, that's difficult now because you talk imperial and I talk metric, but we're talking around about 300 mil, which is about a foot, 12 inches by 12 by 8, we'll say, and an A3, which is the next size up. No problem at all printing from the Fujis, and that's the main thing. And we're talking 1.5 crop with your X100T, and we're talking a 2/3 inch sensor with your X20 there, which is all testament with regards to the way these sensors are just improving as we go along.
Well,
let's talk. Sorry to interrupt you. Let's talk very briefly, because I know you do your video work, and I was surprised before the show you mentioned you do it with a D7000 for the video. Now that's a cracking camera, I know, from my Nikon days. How you obviously enjoy using that camera. That's a
Yeah.
1.5 crop as well. Talk to us a little bit about Nikon. Let's give the other manufacturers a little bit of a crack here, for so
Well,
to
I've been
speak.
an Nikon user since college, early college.
Yeah.
The first camera, I think it's no, my first camera I don't have. My ex-wife took it. I have my second camera. It's the same camera of Nikon FM2, which is
Oh,
yeah, and it still works. I've got
good
it.
camera.
Yeah, it's a beast of a little camera, and I just got Nikon because maybe I couldn't afford the Canon at the time. There might have been a Canon that I wanted, like an AE1, if I'm remembering it right, and the FM2 might have been cheaper, so I got that. But I got really hooked into Nikon because of the glass. The lenses are fantastic, and every time I bought a lens, I was like, "This is really good. This is really good." And I used to shoot on Velvia film. I remember that Velvia with a good Nikon lens, it was almost illegally sharp how good it was. So I still use I have a Nikon 300 millimeter f4. It's like one of the early autofocus lenses.
Yep.
I bought it, I know, a very long time ago, and it still works really well on the newer cameras.
That's good.
There's very little lens distortions in it or chromatic aberrations. I'm surprised that the autofocus is not speedy, but I'm not shooting race cars or anything like that. I'm just like, my investment in lenses with Nikon has been it's mainly that. And so I ended up buying the D100 when it first came out. It was the first DSLR that I could buy, 6 megapixels, as I recall. I still have it too, and I still can use it for time lapse photography or for time lapse videos. And I just progressed from there. I think I got the D2X was the first professional camera that I got from Nikon. So I sort of got locked into the crop sensor. And I just stuck with that for a while. So I ended up buying lenses that were for the crop sensor.
Yeah, but using the crop sensors, one of the main reasons I would suggest is why you're getting such good work from that 300mm lens, because you're using the main center part of the lens activity there. Yeah, the primary area. Yeah. So you ended up going through that FM2, may I just add, is the camera which I sold to get the FE2, because for some ridiculous reason I wanted the aperture and the shutter priority, and I wish I'd never sold it. It's a camera which 1/8,000th of a second it had on it. It was just one hell of a camera.
I still have it in the box right up here, along with my F3. Which
don't tempt me. Don't tempt me.
The F3 is actually the company that I work for. They gave it to me because I was doing a job for them, and they didn't want to pay me cash. I said, "Well, I'll take the camera." And so they gave me the F3, and the F3 with the motor drive on it.
That's not too shabby.
Yeah, the only thing I wish I still had for it was my favorite lens was the 180 millimeter manual focus. That on the F3 with the motor drive on it always looked to me like a professional photojournalist camera. Like you walked around, you look like you were serious.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting rid of those film cameras. They still work. I might have to check the shutters and stuff like that, but
yeah, exactly. You got to do a service something that haven't been used. Do you still shoot film from time to time?
No.
I
was so happy to get rid of film. I had so much frustration.
I'm just going to show you something here. I don't know if you can see this. This is this is the Nikon EM. Okay, now it so happens the EM was the very first Nikon that I ever bought. This isn't the one that I bought because obviously I sold that one. But when a friend said, "I've got an EM for sale," I said, "I'm going to buy that." That lens is the 1.8 D 50mm 1.8D. Works perfectly. Went out a few weeks ago, took some film out with me. It's the Kodak 400. Had a fantastic time with it.
Really?
It's got some color film in there now. I'm very fortunate. I've got a camera shop around the corner that does do the processing for me and gives me a lovely CD. So I'm still shooting film from time to time. But
I might pick it up again. I'll check. I might just buy a roll of film and stick it in the camera and see if it still works. But
go for it. Give it
as long as I don't have to do it on a regular basis. That's the thing.
You got to take your time. You got to remember, you got to go back. Only got 36 exposures to get it right this time, and you can't blast away.
Can I bring up? This is going back to the Fujis for a second. I was talking about the film simulations.
Yeah.
That's kind of what brought me back, like got me to stick to the Fujis. And uh, obviously, when I'm shooting with my Nikon, I've been shooting RAW all the time. And I tell my students, I also do private instruction and teach
Yeah.
workshops and stuff like that. And I'm always a big advocate of shooting RAW. I always say, you want to shoot RAW all the time because you can always make JPEGs from it, and it's a digital negative. And we know the whole story about RAW.
Mm-hmm.
When I picked up this Fuji, I totally switched.
Yeah, RAW went out the window.
No, it doesn't go out the window. I still shoot it, but the
Yeah.
primary image that I'm using now are the JPEGs that the Fuji spits out.
Yeah.
And there's something about this. I noticed it in the X20, and then when I got the X100T with the classic chrome simulation in it,
Yeah.
I realized that these cameras sort of crossed a boundary in terms of technical and have become emotional.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that might sound a little vague, but on the Nikon cameras, you can shoot, RAW plus JPEG, and you can process the JPEG in the camera somewhat. And I never, it's like, okay, these are great, but they're not, I never really gave them a second thought. But when I saw the Fujis, the way they've processed their JPEGs, and it must be in combination with the kind of sensors they're using and how the pixels are laid out. I saw something in those files, in those JPEG files, that not only just reminded me about what film was like, but it was like it had, like, I have some of the advantages of film, like the look and the texture, or something about it, with all the advantages of digital. And when I got the X100T, I pretty much only shot in classic chrome. I still do the RAW, but now I do the RAW as a backup. My main shot is that image that comes out of the camera, straight out of the camera, the JPEG. And I thought that was a really interesting twist.
You're right, because I've heard this mentioned many times. I've seen it myself, and when you first see the image, you really have to sort of step back and you think, "Whoa, hold on a minute! This takes me back," especially if you were a film photographer to start off with. But I think it is. I think you touched on it there very briefly. I think it is something to do with the actual layout of the pixels on the sensor. They don't go regimented RGB. As you know, they split it. There is a bias towards the green part of the sensor in there, which I think is why the Velvias and the Superiors of the that we experience with those films, it comes about when we actually see the image. It's got that sort of semblance of what we used to appreciate from the Fuji film.
Yeah.
Saying that, I was more of I don't know about yourself, but I was more of a Kodachrome user and Ektachrome user. So
I loved Kodachrome.
It was superb, especially when you were taking portraits or that sort of stuff. But the Fujis really made their name with the landscapers. The landscapers just loved it. And there was obviously this bias towards the green, which I think they've replicated in the sensor. That's the only way that I can put my finger on it. I've asked so many guys about it. They've all come up with exactly the same comments as you said, that the quality of the images is so film-like.
It goes beyond the pixel peeping, because
yes, it does.
Like I said, I mean, for you and me, we sort of look like we grew up in the film age, and so we've seen film transition to digital, and now trying to get back into that sense of film again, so we can appreciate it. I'd be really curious about the younger people who are starting to use these cameras, whether they notice it or not. But
yeah, that's a good point.
I did notice that it's subtle. It's like I never paid attention to JPEGs, which is the reason why I went to the RAW files all the time. And for some reason, what they did to this camera, obviously I'm guessing it has something to do with the way they're mixing up their pixels on the sensor. That's the geeky part. Step back part is like, I look at the picture and I can't describe it in words, that I'm seeing something that is, I want to say lifelike. I don't know. It's
yeah, I know exactly what you. It's very, very hard to put. I'll tell you my comment, which I made on my blog when I first switched all my Nikon gear. I sold all my Nikon gear for one camera and one lens. Since then, I've bought a few other bits. You know, I bought originally the XE1 and the 1855. I got the beautiful 3514, which goes with the XE1, and then I added the 100S. But to put a finer point on it, Fuji brought photography back to me. Now,
Yes.
I was lighter. I didn't have the backache and the shoulder ache. That's the obvious statement. But for some inexplicable reason, when you see those images on the screen and when you print them out, and that's when I thought it's brought photography back to me. And amen to that, as they would say.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that. And this is coming for me as the transition from my commercial photography, where I made the bread and butter, to something else. And so I'm picking up this camera and taking street shots, and I realize, well, I'm not doing that for a living right now, but now I have in my hands a camera or a device that is making me feel like the way I enjoyed photography when I was first getting into it, like when I first would pick up a camera, and without the darkroom part, but like the idea of taking a picture with I think when I also had a Pentax when I was growing up, a Pentax K1000, but that feel of it, like I'm just taking pictures for fun. And now I'm doing that with my Fuji, and sort of my goal is to, like, I would love to get back into commercial photography, but in a different way now. Like, the Fujis have given me that ability to sort of to shoot again without having to worry about, well, I'm not making money from this, so I'm going to just live with my camera and see what happens,
And I've spoken to, again, many photographers, professional photographers, wedding photographers, commercial, lifestyle, fashion photographers that are using the Fujis to do this work. And they're not, I think before there used to be a time we said, you've got to be a professional photographer, you've got to have a DSLR, it's got to be big lenses, big cases, full of gear. Now these professionals photographers are turning up because they know how to use the equipment. Let's not pull any punches on that. They know how to use the equipment. They are producing stunning work with just the simplest of equipment, and the amount of people now using the Fujis is endless. And just to put a finer point on it, just to add to it, the Panasonics are fantastic. The Lumix GH4 4/3, Olympus 4/3, all quality cameras, and more professionals are starting to use this sort of gear.
And I think it just allows us sort of the freedom to
it does.
In fact, when I got the X100T, the first week I had to shoot a job, and I was shooting Dick Cavett, the old talk show host. He was giving a lecture in New York, and at the end of it he was signing books, and I decided to go up on the stage, and I just shot him exclusively with the X100T. And it brought this sort of intimacy, like I was getting in his face with it, and they didn't mind, and everybody was like gathering and looking at the camera. So it could have been any manufacturer. I mean, Fuji just happened to be the ones to tap in this, and it could have been anybody.
I think we have to sort of be fair here. Let's not make it a love lust over Fuji. It's just what you and I are both experiencing with this particular type of manufacture, but a good friend of mine uses the Olympus OMD versions of those cameras, and he's producing some fantastic work. But the lightness, the shape, the style of photography that you can create with this is really second to none. As you say, you can get right in to your subject and get some good work.
Maybe it's like, for me, it's like the perfect storm. It's like things have sort of come together in my life at a certain time. These guys sort of came in at a certain time, and it's just like, okay, I'm really lucky to be here at this moment with this stuff, and with these ideas that I have in my mind about what to do with my life and what to do with my photography. So I
think also another thing you've got to bear in mind, if we go right the way back and we talk about Henri Cartier-Bresson, Kappa, these guys that switched to the Leica when that camera first came about, and a lot of guys who were using the large format, medium format cameras, I think you won't be able to take a decent photograph with that. But of course, the Leica allowed them to do that sort of reportage, that documentary type work, and that's the famous part of the history of photography, isn't it? How that sort of developed from there.
And just that idea that the equipment doesn't get in our way, to create these things. That's what I like about it. It's like, for me, actually, I've changed my whole workflow system. So since I was working with my Nikons, I would shoot and then come back and bring them into Lightroom or Aperture, do my processing and X, Y, and Z. Now with my Fuji workflow, I'm shooting JPEG, and RAW as a backup. I'm processing sometimes in the camera, which is
Yeah.
reprocess in the camera. Like I'll take the RAW. That's why I want to shoot the RAW file, so I can change the JPEG of it. I'm actually exporting them to my iPad, and I'll do sometimes black and white conversions. I'll shoot color all the time because I might want the color file, but because I love the classic chrome. But a lot of the times, what I'll do is I'll convert it to black and white, either in the camera or in Snapseed, which is on the iPad, which is a fantastic app, by the way.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, couldn't agree more with you.
The reason why I say that is it's a very gentle processing program. I mean, you can go to extremes with it, but I find that it can process very subtly. And because we're working with a JPEG, you got to be kind of subtle, and you don't want to do extreme processing with it, so the picture doesn't lose quality. So I find that Snapseed really works well with the Fuji JPEGs, and I got my recipe for a lot of the pictures that you're seeing on my Instagram account. There's a certain recipe I have for a black and white that I've always wanted to look. This was what I always wanted. I just couldn't find it before, and I found it now with the Fuji and the. So my whole workflow is kind of mobile.
Workflow's changed, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm spending less time in front of the computer too. I mean,
that's the other advantage, isn't it? Yeah, you're not wasting time. My workflow at the moment is something which I picked up from Rincy Ruiz. Go out shooting, come back, load them into Lightroom, and I leave them. I marinate them for about 2 or 3 days, and then I go back to them. And obviously that's my workflow to start off. Yeah. That's enough about my side. Let's do a screen share.
Sure.
Antonio, and you asked me to go to your Instagram page.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed this will come up and you'll be able to see it.
Yep, I see it.
There. So what we do is just I haven't. Can I? Yes, I can. I just wanted to make sure that I can scroll through. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through some of your work here. When I don't want to go labor on this. I'd love to look at your photographs. I'm mindful of the time. Probably got about another 10 minutes. So
we can go a little longer. I'm okay for.
Oh, okay, good. I was a bit.
A few more minutes.
I was concerned about your health.
I'm okay. I'm actually talking to you is giving me a lot of energy.
Oh, so that's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's good. Okay. Let's just go through some images here, then,
sure.
Antonio. Just tell me where the images were taken.
So
cameras you were using, reasons, whys, and wherefores.
All right. So the vast majority of these pictures are literally taken in my walk to work or my walk home from work.
Okay.
In my neighborhood I live in an area in Brooklyn called Kensington. Curious where that name came from. I border on another neighborhood called Ditmas Park. The picture that's right in front of you is taken on the main drag in Ditmas Park called Cortelyou Road.
I can see that, yeah.
And I just got off the subway. Actually, I shot this yesterday, so
lovely.
I don't marinate the pictures that much. I do sometimes because I end up shooting a lot and it takes me a while to post them.
I can understand
over time. But you can see I posted this earlier today from work, but I shot this yesterday on my way home from work. We have a really diverse neighborhood, like I said earlier, a lot of different immigrant communities, and it's not really the right word to say it, but we have Central Americans, Mexican, we have Eastern Europeans, we have gentrified neighborhood people, we have hipsters, Hasidic Jews, and Orthodox Muslims, and we all sort of live in this really tight space. Yeah. So this shot itself. There's a street that I walk on in the morning, and there's all these guys who are looking to get day jobs. So they work for the contractors that come by, and so they're sort of perfect targets for me as I walk by, because they're all waiting there for the contractors to come by and hire them for the day. Yeah. So that's McDonald Avenue. So I name all my pictures by the street that I shoot them on. So
I'm with you. Yeah, I can see that. That's a nice touch, actually. I
stopped captioning my work because someone told me, a photographer friend of mine who I respect a lot, he said, don't put captions on your work because you don't want to put something in someone else's mind. And so I was like, okay, but I wasn't sure what to do. So I decided to just name it by the avenue or the street that I was walking on when I took the shot.
Have you, when you do these shots, do you have any, dare I say, problems? You know, some sort of reaction to you taking the images?
Not yet.
No, yeah,
because I'm doing it. I'm doing it on the sly, mainly because.
Okay.
Well, for a few reasons. I grew up in New York, and one of the things about not bothering other people, it was sort of ingrained in me. And I really am a big fan of Walker Evans, and when he was doing his subway stuff, and just being able to grab pictures of people in their regular environment. And the other thing about that is that generally, I mean, I've gone up to people and say, "Can I take your picture?" But that's rare. But when I do that, everybody puts on some sort of pose, and
they pose
it's okay.
For it,
and it's okay. It's not. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I prefer to get people in their natural state without that idea that they're getting photographed. And I think what ends up happening is people think I'm like, because I wear the camera around my neck, and I do a lot of distractions, so people don't really know I'm taking their picture. But they see me, and so they're looking at me, and I sometimes think they're suspecting they're getting their photograph taken. But I have yet to have any trouble with anybody, and I'm not trying to create trouble. I just, I'm not trying to be a sneak, but I want a certain look from people, and when if someone catches me, and it might open up a discussion, and I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But I mainly like to get people just in their natural state.
It's interesting you said, actually, because just this last week I was on a street walkabout in London, which is predominantly where I go for my photography, and this lady came up to me and asked me to take a photograph of her family with her iPhone. And she said to me, I just started to talk to her, and then she stopped and she said, I don't speak English. I'm from Naples in Italy. And it's sort of in a roundabout way, it stopped the conversation. But then I thought, no, let's sort of just try and carry on here. And I got a couple of beautiful portraits of them just talking there. And they didn't mind, they were just enjoying London. And we had some fantastic weather this last weekend. So, it's amazing what you can do, actually, if you do break the ice and talk to these people. It's
a great opportunity.
It is, yeah.
My other hat is... the other hat I wear is a friend of mine and I are trying to, we have a workshop called Switch to Manual, where we teach people how to shoot manual on their cameras. And we have a podcast that we do called Street Shots. And we did a whole episode about street etiquette, about what you do when you come up to somebody, and how do you engage them to take their picture, and what is the, what do we do when we're on the street with people? So it's a really interesting discussion to
it is and it's amazing how many times you get involved with people and you say, I've got a good friend of mine came along at the weekend, and I said, right, what are we going to do today? Because it was his first real street walk, and he said I just want to watch what the guys are doing, and I'm just going to take some photographs. And I said, do you want to do some street portraits? He said, no, I'm not ready for that yet. No. Well, crikey, within about half an hour, he saw me stop someone, and he went round the corner, asked someone, he came in, he said, I got it. He had absolute joy on his face. And I said, good for you, pal, go for more. And he did. He said, I've broken the ice, I know exactly what I'm doing now. I think these photographs are showing to me what we, from the other side of the pond, Antonio, appreciate and know what New York is like. Obviously, we know all the immigration and the emigration that took place, people moving to New York back in the, pre-war days, around about the 30s, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and then everything that followed after the Second World War. And I think this is one thing which I do wish that a lot of countries, and I mean this sincerely, I do wish a lot of cities and countries would work together like New York does. I know you have your problems and have had in the past, but it's not the ideal world. But I think it's one of the cities that really is one that needs to be looked at and studied and appreciate. You've got so many diverse countries, languages, religions as well. I love the way New York works.
What's really interesting in my neighborhood, it's not uncommon to see, a Hasidic Jewish family walking in one direction, and Orthodox Muslims walking in the other direction on the same sidewalk, and everybody is just people doing their thing.
Yep, getting on with life.
Yeah. Now that's not to put a sugar coating on it. You know, we've
No,
we've
no, no.
all
I understand where you're coming
there's
from.
been a lot of problems, but we're probably not always the best example, but there is something to be seen in the people when you just walk around the streets,
Yeah,
and I'm hoping I'm trying to capture some of that um, in
I
my
think you are.
photographs.
I think you are. I think this, actually, this image I'm showing here, the colored version here, this guy looks to me like he's in Hispanic, but
Yeah, I couldn't tell. I didn't know.
he's got an American flag there, and that really sums up
The street vendor too, and look at the
exactly right.
location where I shot it.
Wall Street. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was there
yeah,
many years ago.
yeah. And
Many years ago.
like I said, mostly I shoot. A lot of it is a black and white. You'll notice on the site.
Yeah,
Occasionally, I will post the color pictures just because the color speaks so much. And
yeah,
for some reason, this shot did not look quite right
yeah.
in black and white. And I needed to
No,
see the flag.
you needed color for this one, especially
Yeah,
because you got the stars and stripes there. But at the same time, the telling the story, you've got
yeah,
this guy he's obviously got a natural tan to his face. You need that in
yeah.
color to show that.
He certainly knows. I was just taking his picture. Like I just went up to him and I was shooting.
Yeah, exactly right. Do
Yeah,
you find that when you're out shooting, you take these photographs and there's something, you see, I'm a firm believer that photography is innate and an innate ability. I think there are certain aspects that can be taught, but I think it's an innate ability. And that time that you actually press the shutter, do you think sometimes you take a shot without thinking about it, and then when you get back and you put it into Lightroom or Snapseed as you do, and say, wow, didn't realize I'd done that?
yeah, that happens. That happens
A lot.
so often. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's the happy surprise too. That's sort of one of the things I do to sort of rekindle the spirit of film. Is that I sometimes don't always process the pictures right away. Like you said, you let them marinate for a while. But I actually let them sit. I let them sit on my camera for a while.
Oh,
You
right.
know,
Okay.
and I don't even download them to my computer yet or to my iPad. I just let them sit there, maybe for until the week is over, and then I'll download them and look at them, and then I'll be surprised by what I see sometimes.
Yeah, some good memories come flooding back.
Yeah, and I'm often, I'll say that because of the way I'm shooting, I shoot from the hip, and I'm, again, I'm using the X100T, so I'm still trying to figure out. I'm not exactly happy with the focusing system on it, by the way. That's going to be my one criticism about it. For some reason, I don't think there's anything physically wrong with my camera, but what it chooses to focus on sometimes is sort of a puzzle to me.
Yeah.
Especially when it's a very simple setup. Like there's a person, nothing in the background, and for some reason it focuses on the background.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
But often I'm walking and I'm grabbing the shot from the hip, and so I'll find that I miss the shot, because I'm trying to angle it, and I hope I know the way my camera works, but I'll miss it sometimes, and I'll have that darn, it was a really good shot. I could tell because I look at the person's face or their gesture, and I look at it and I'm like, oh, I cut their head off, or I was shooting at too slow a shutter speed and it's blurry, or the camera focused on the background. And I just, sometimes I'll actually go back, I'll circle back around and take the shot again. But that's when it's possible. Most times it's not possible. And I'll let it go.
And that moment is lost, isn't it?
Yeah, the one that got away. We call it the one that got away. And I just sort of live with it. That's just sort of the cost of,
That's street photography, though. Street photography. Okay, landscape photography. They're sitting there. There's a particular movement of cloud which they may be looking to catch, or something of that nature. Street photography is different. It's in the moment. You're recording a particular moment. You're documenting that, and you're going to get, like, for instance, take this example here we're looking at here. 2 seconds later, that guy would not have had his hand up to his eye.
Yeah. It just
and you may have been drinking from the bottle. I know. You just don't know what happens.
There's even this, like, I saw these two women walking, and I saw these other people in the background, and I was really hoping that I would get them in the background, so I'd have some sort of other layer and something else going on in the background, and I was happy that I got it. But I'm looking. It's not just random that I'm pushing the camera into someone's face. I'm really looking for gestures. I'm looking for clothing. I'm looking for face. I throw away a lot of pictures and looking at them. Like, I think it looked good when I was walking by,
Yeah.
but I see, I'm like, wow, you know, it's just, it doesn't have, something's not quite there. But I'm always looking for something, and that makes the picture special. And I've been pretty much loading up Instagram with these photographs just because I find it being one of the best places for me to share this kind of work.
Yeah.
And I don't use Instagram for personal stuff. Like, I'm not putting up pictures of my cats or
No.
my wife or anything like that. I'm really just focusing on the street, and I'm finding that it helps for me to have this place to put them up.
Yeah.
As a sort of a final destination for, it's not quite final, but because people are saying, when are you going to do a book? When are you going to do a show? And it's like,
That's thing, isn't it? That's the next thing.
Yeah, someone said, you know, the problem with doing a book is that if you put it together, you might think the project is over. And I took that as like, oh, that's interesting. So I'm not sure about a book, but I understand where it's coming from. People are saying, you're doing such great work, and you've got such a huge, you know, amount of it, and everything's different, and it's really saying something about the neighborhood and the place that I'm living in. That I should do something else with it, and I'm working towards that. I just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, the book thing, I think, is a big favorite for all photographers. They want to get their work printed in the end, and it needs to be that nice coffee table book. I've been looking at just simple magazines just recently. A 20-page or a 40-page magazine you can get printed through Blurb for around about between £4 and £5, £6. So that's what, $8 to $10, we'll say, for argument's sake. And it's just a case of having something. The other thing which I've been doing myself, I know you're looking basically to sell your work on there, but I've actually been buying myself sketchbooks and printing, and then sticking the photograph into that sketchbook. So I've got something on my coffee table to show friends or family that want to be bored by my photographs from time to time.
I really want to. I want to print them up. A lot of these print photographs on, you know, I have the Epson 3800, which to me has become like, I only have so much room in my apartment. I would like to have a bigger printer, but even if I had a bigger printer, I wouldn't be able to store the prints because they were too big.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the 3800 is just the right size that I can print fairly decent sized prints that are really good quality and archival. And so it's like the perfect combination, but it's just sitting there right now. It's like I got all this ink in it, and I was like, why is it sitting there? I should print up all these pictures.
I'm the same. I've got next to me an Epson. I think I've got the B. What have I got? I've got the R1900 here.
Yeah,
it prints A3 plus. Beautiful printer, does all the work. I'm exactly the same. I don't print enough, and I'm going to. I keep saying I'm going to, but I just don't print enough.
It brings the pictures out into the real world. They become an object.
Exactly.
And I mean, I like seeing them on the screen. I like seeing them on my Retina iPad. It looks really sharp. But I want to be able to control the viewer's experience by like how big I print and how the black and white looks. And so one of my goals is to spend some time printing up these shots. I mean, I'm not going to print up 1,200 of them because I don't have any room for 1,200.
No, of course not. No.
I do want to print because I think bringing that object into the world is important.
Yeah. In actual fact, Antonio, for my situation, I stopped going to my camera club a couple of years ago mainly because I wanted to, last year, I wanted to concentrate on developing this show. But I was talking to a guest last week who is from my own camera club, and we were talking afterwards, and she said, what are you going to do? And because I realized I'm not printing enough because I'm not part of that club, because we do the exhibitions and we do the judging and that sort of thing. I'm coming around to thinking, I'm gonna get back to the club next year, get back into printing with a purpose, and then take it on from there. And if it turns out that it's interfering again with this show and other commitments that I've got, then obviously I'll have to knock it on the head. But I think it's that for me would be a good process for me to go down the line and get me back into printing, because I really, really want to start printing again. I love it. I love printing digitally. I like all the mistakes that you make. you know, and you say, "Oh, damn it, I've had my screen too bright again. I've got to turn the brightness and get the balance right." I love all that. I love it.
It captures a little bit of the magic of the darkroom, not exactly, but
no, exactly.
a little bit of it. But
yeah, but as you say, you're right. It does. Brooke Jensen made a very good point one time. He said it allows your birds to fly. He was letting all your images go. And I think that's a very good point. You know, basically when they can't stay in the computer all the time, you've got to let them fly. You've got to be able to show people hand on print. You can't beat it.
Yeah, I agree. And I promise I'll get to that point by the time we talk again.
Yeah, exactly right. I'm very mindful of the time here, and I've been so appreciative you joining me, Antonio. Perhaps if we could perhaps make another meetup later in the year, and we can go into a little bit more detail as regards to
I would love it.
how you got started in photography.
I'm so honored that you want to.
Don't be silly. It's great. I came across you because of the Fuji link up, and I saw a couple of your videos and your reviews that you've done on work, and we got so much more.
Let me ask you: did the review? You read the review? Did it ring any bells? Did it make sense? Did it?
Yeah, I enjoyed reading the reviews. I think sometimes I've got to be honest with you. I read the review, but I don't want to get sort of carried away with the review and say that's the camera I've got to buy. I've got to feel that camera in my hand. I'm looking now potentially at the XT10, which has just come out to replace my XT1, because I've got a feeling, a little birdie that I read, I don't think Fuji are going to replace the XE2 with an XE3, which was going to be my next upgrade. So that's it. But yeah, I love reading the reviews, but yeah, things come across quite nicely as regards to what I'm familiar with the cameras, but I try not, and it's personal. Please don't take this personally. I don't get into a review and say, "Yeah, that's the camera I'm going to buy." Because
I never wrote a review for a camera before, and
I
also felt compelled to write something about this camera to share some of the experiences and some of the learnings I've had while I've been working with it. Like I told you, it's a very big learning curve, and I thought really I need to share some of this, because if I wouldn't want someone to buy the camera or not buy the camera based on what I said. No. But if you have the camera and you're looking at it, you're like, what's going on here? I can't figure this stuff out. That was sort of my goal, to sort of share some of that knowledge in a review form. But when I wrote that up, and I said, I never wrote a review. Fuji Australia, Fuji Europe, Fuji UK, they all picked up on the tweets, and they said, "Oh, we hope it's not your last review," and they all retweeted.
Well, I spoke at length with Fuji at the recent show in Birmingham, and that is exactly the type of reviews that they want to see. They don't want to see all the old bombastic with Fuji this, Fuji that, Fuji this. They want honest, straightforward opinion. I wrote a review on the 18-135 lens, and it was a lens which I was interested because basically I see it as a travel lens, a travel photographer's lens. Put that on your camera and away you go. You don't have to worry about any other lens for anything if you're going to go on a holiday. But for me, it doesn't suit my style of photography. It's heavy. It's a heavy lens. It's not. The 1855 I just love to death. I think it's just a superb lens, and that's the lens which I would take if I'm going away on holiday. And I think that's what Fuji want. They want honest opinion about their products. They're not frightened to read product comments which don't necessarily say this is the all singing, all dancing camera lens that you'll ever want to buy.
Well, I think other camera manufacturers can learn a lot from the way Fuji is. I mean, the way they deal with the photography community, like when they have Zach Arias running around and being sort of an advocate, but not really being, he's not part of the chorus line. I read his reviews of I don't know if it was the X100S or the X100 when it first came out, but like my goal was sort of to follow his footsteps a little bit, like to talk about the gear.
Yeah, very true.
In that way, and just the way that Fuji feels like they're on the ground with everybody. I don't see Nikon doing that. I don't see Canon doing that really, and that's not to put them down, and it's not saying that they should do that, but well, maybe they should actually.
I think you make very good sense in the point you're making. Fuji's attitude, especially with the Kaizen sort of process of, who would you? I can't think of any other camera manufacturer. I think it's being copied now. That in actual fact would give you a firmware upgrade of a camera which is 2 versions old.
Right. Right.
They have now stopped doing a firmwares for the X100 and the X100S. I can understand that now because you got the T, and things are obviously going to progress. But I don't know of any other manufacturer that would do that, and that is credit to Fuji and appreciating their users. Because I think I used to play a lot of golf, Antonio, and I basically every new driver was out. My son was saying, "Dad, I need this driver," and I said, "Why?" It's the same with cameras, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm mindful of the time. I said,
Yeah,
I think we could carry on for ages, but you got to go to work,
yeah.
and I want you to save that throat for this afternoon.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully we can get together later part of the year and talk a little bit more.
Please, so much.
Yeah,
I'd love to tell you about the other stuff that we're doing here in Brooklyn, and
exactly,
switch the manual and podcast and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm really excited.
That'd be brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining. Well, there we go. There's a nice little show for you we had today, and thank you so much to my guest today, Antonio M Rosario. Do a little Google search on and check his work out. It's the same AM Rosario for his Instagram. I'm going to put all the links to his websites and his YouTubes, everything on the blog, as I normally do with all my guests. It's just suffice for me to say it's Thursday. I'm going away for a nice long weekend, a little bit of a cruise down to Guernsey. But one thing, if you're going out shooting this weekend, leave your camera bag at home. All the best to you. Bye for now.